out. So I'm actually going to change it up. We're going to do the yoga and injury discussion first, then we'll come to the pregnancy later, because I think there's a bit of a discussion I want to have, which might also feed into the next different chapter of that. All right. So like I said, there's a lot. Did you guys get to pre-read? We're like, here's an assignment and another assignment. And can you also please read these 20 pages before the lecture on Friday at 5 p.m.? All right. So what we're going to chat about today, we're going to have more discussion element, but there's a lot of information in your notes. And as with anything in the yoga world, as with anything in any field, there's always new research, there's always new information coming available. So as much as we present this information to you, and as much we have these discussions, what's always quite nice is to kind of keep a finger on the pulse as to what's happening in the yoga world, which we'll chat about today, and constant new developments that are happening as we start to explore more about the human body. So one of the things you guys can do in your free time that you don't have this weekend is there's a section in your notes specifically on yoga and injury, which kind of goes into that quite in depth, and that's just information for you to read and to kind of let that sink in. And then also you'll see there's a prenatal section, which is taken from a book, and also we'll discuss on today. So there's no need to necessarily make additional notes. What's in the book is quite thorough, but from our session this evening, we're going to discuss certain topics and questions. And then if there's something that comes up that you feel like you might want to remember or grab hold of, or maybe revisit next week when you feel you've got the energetic capacity to do so, then just make those notes, or jot those notes down. The reason being is because sometimes when we discuss things, there's a lot of things happening, and we might not process every single sentence and topic that comes up here. But within the next week, or maybe a couple of months or a year down the line, you revisit your notes and you go, okay, cool. I mean, if you revisit your notes, but that's the whole purpose, is it kind of gets the mind thinking again, which I think is so important for us as yoga teachers. All right. So how we're going to work today is we're going to start with a discussion. So I think what would probably be the best is I'm happy for you guys to keep yourselves unmuted, unless maybe you don't feel comfortable with that. That's totally chilled. But I want there to be quite a nice interaction between us. So I'm just going to say, whoever, when you feel you want to add something, just put your hand up, unmute yourself and go. We can all see each other. So we'll be able to gauge who goes next, and I feel like energetically we will sort that all out and we'll get through it. Okay. So the first topic we're going to really explore is yoga and injury, which is quite a big topic. It's something that even from when I did my training to now, the discussion about it has changed quite significantly. All right. And I think it's important for us as teachers to know what these discussions are and how we can present in our yoga studio space. So what we're going to chat about before I get into some of the nitty-gritty things is our views, right? When we go into a yoga studio, when we're teaching the yoga studio and we have a space, often what we have heard, what we have experienced is a teacher asking, what injuries do you guys have? You know, who's injured here? What injury do you have? Let me know. And we're going to explore whether we should ask that or whether we should not ask that as a teacher. All right. And there's competing discussions or arguments from both sides. And I want to bring in, hopefully we've got answers and contributors from both sides. And let's start with a show of hands of who thinks we should definitely, as yoga teachers, ask what injuries are in the room. Maybe just lift up your hand if you say yes. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4.5, 5. Okay, let's say about half. Some indecisive. Okay, maybe you're a little bit open-minded to the chat. Who thinks we should not ask? Okay. Okay, Shakira, she, and Raquel, and Nicole over there. All right. Okay, so there was a few that didn't put up hands, which might mean that you're kind of not so sure, and you might make a decision at the end of the chat. All right. So we're going to chat about why it is good, and why we have, or why teachers have been taught to do it, why it does happen in the studio. And then we'll bring in a counter argument to say, okay, well, why should we really? Okay, I had someone who had their hand up for, yes, they do think we should ask. I want you to maybe, anyone who is brave enough to tell us why you think it might be important for us to ask why, who has injuries. Yes, Hader.
I mean, just for myself now, my knees are quite niggly, and I know that, you know, if I don't have the personality type where I will look out for myself, then I might do the poses and not be comfortable telling the instructor, and then actually hurt myself even more. So I think it's important, but although I do feel that there should be a reasonable way to pose it to your students, so they don't have to all come out in front of each other to say, you know, because sometimes people are shy. They don't want to say, oh, I've got this injury and that injury. So I think sometimes maybe we can look at a way for them to, you know, come to you and just talk to you about it, maybe give them 5 minutes or something. I know it's difficult because a lot of the times people are late, but that would also give you an indication of which props you would need throughout the session, and also who to watch during specific poses. Because if you know, for example, my knees are niggly, you're going to have to make sure that when I go into pigeon or mermaid that I've got the props available, or that I'm using the props and not injuring myself to the point where I can't come back the next time.
Okay, cool, interesting. Lots of things we're going to explore in there, and I'm going to give you one scenario, and I want you guys to get involved and share your opinions here. So let's paint you guys a picture. Now, you've been in a class before. Let's say you're going to a studio where there's maybe 30 students, all right? You've arrived there 15 minutes before the time, and there's all these students piling in, and someone's like waiting in line, and they say, oh, you know, I've actually got sore knees, but there's actually someone there who hasn't told you that they might have a niggly knee or whatever the case may be, because they're shy, right? Some people might feel more confrontational, other people won't. But now there's 10 people in your class that possibly have injuries. Do you think
you're saying that, yeah, you're saying that time is an issue, so you can't now go and run through all of them. Yeah, I get it. So maybe just say we're going to be doing you know, a sequence where you might feel some pressure on, say, the knees or the back, or, you know, whichever poses you know that you might be, and muscles and tendons you might be working. And if at any point it's uncomfortable, then stop and just, you know, don't push it any further.
Okay. Does anyone else want to add to that?
That's why I was in between, because it's fine if you're in a smaller class to try and remember what's wrong with who and all of that. But when it comes to bigger classes, how on earth are you going to remember every person's injury and every person's situation?
Mm-hmm. And Amy, you wanted to say something or add to that?
Darren, can I
Yeah.
ask you, what is the program for the 3 hours today? Sorry, I'm a little bit behind. Are we exercising, or is it just going to be, are we discussing things?
We're going to be having a discussion now, particularly on yoga and injury. The mat is there because you might want to feel a couple of things out for yourself as we move through it a bit later. And then when we get into the prenatal, there's going to be, we're not going to do a formal practice. It's more on and off your mat, feel it out, very informal. So I said, if you need to sit a bit more comfortably, please prepare yourself comfortably.
Yeah, I just, so I know what to mentally prepare for.
100%.
Yeah.
Are we all mentally, setting expectation is important. I think I only mentioned it maybe when not everyone was on here. Is everyone feeling like they have a clear indication of the evening? Do I need to set? It's going to be quite fluid because you might feel move in and out of the others. And we'll go from there. But I will give you guys a break, and I'll let us move and do the necessary things for our body throughout the course. Okay, yes.
I'll add to the discussion then.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
A little bit better than I think it's also, if I was a bit indecisive, because I think also you taking the responsibility on yourself for somebody else's injuries. You cannot know what extent they've injured, and I think it's everybody's responsibility then to where they go.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. Amy? Oh, I can't hear you, Amy. Sorry. You're not muted, but it might have just lost, it didn't maybe connect to audio. Let's try again. No. No, can't hear you. But it seems like you can hear us. My recommendation next to the mute button is to just click the level up, the little arrow up, and then just say leave computer audio and then join audio again. Otherwise, if that doesn't work, hop off the meeting, join us again, usually does the trick. I'm going to carry on talking, but when you we'll hear you. I'll let you know. I'm going to come back to you in like 2 minutes, if that's okay. I'm not forgetting. Okay, does anyone have anything else to add? So just from an arguments point of view, we've had people who have said, okay, yeah, we want to know so we can keep an eye on them. Maybe we can get the props. We've spoken about, okay, yes, it's a big class. All right. But let's see if we have a bit more to add to that. Maybe the people who said yes, I think we should ask. Candice?
Hi. What was my thought process? It's been a long day. I think I was thinking, like, if it's a big class and there are quite a few people who have injuries, you can find out what those injuries are, and if there's anything in, I think Haida kind of spoke to this, but if there's anything in your sequence that might be problematic for someone with something wrong with their knees, for example, you can advise in general, like, don't put too much weight on your knees. So it's not like a personalized, you don't have to understand each person's exact injury and how to work with it, but just a general, there's a lot of pressure on your knees in this class, so maybe back off and use some blocks, or like something like that in general for each kind of, you know, wherever the injury is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and my question to you, I'm just going to ask questions back just because I'm trying to get a little bit of back and forth as well. So let's say, for example, you ask me, okay, Taryn, or are there any injuries? And I say, you know what, Candice, I have pes anserine bursitis. What are you going to say?
Explain to me what that is.
Okay, right. So in
what health practitioners?
Okay, yes, right. Okay, we're not health practitioners, right? We're not medical doctors. We are yoga teachers, right? Which means our job is to
teach yoga.
Aha. All right. So there's a bit of a discussion at the moment, which I think is really, really important. And I'll get to those raised hands now, is that if I ask you a question, if I say, do you have any injuries? To some extent, does it possibly imply that if you answer me, I have some level of awareness of what injury you have? If I say, Melissa, do you have an injury? And you give me an answer and I go, oh, I don't know what that is. Isn't going to be a bit weird, right? But it also implies that if, like what Candice said, I want to know what injury they have so I know how to possibly prop or modify. But if you don't know the injury, how do you know how to prop or modify, right? And do we as yoga teachers have the capacity to know every single injury? I don't want that pressure. I don't know about you guys. I don't want someone to have an expectation that I know how to adapt to any other injury. I saw raised hands and they went down. But I want to hear what you have to say. Everyone's like, I'm just slowly going to back away. I think it was Stefan.
Yeah. I don't know. Personally, I think it would depend on the kind of the context, but ultimately it's up to the person coming to the yoga studio to make it known that either that if they have a serious injury, they need to make it known, or if not, they're the ones pushing themselves. They're the ones who know that they have a leg roll, that something could go wrong. So the responsibility ultimately should be up to them. If we aren't directly pushing them and saying, no, go harder, but we're just guiding them through their practice, then ultimately that should come up responsibly on them.
So yeah, you want to empower students to listen to their body. We know we do that in a yoga class. Like, okay, observe, listen to your body. You might give them a statement that says, if you feel any discomfort, back off. Right? There's no pressure on you as an instructor, right? But then in that case, even if you do that, would you still ask them what injury they had? If they had any injuries, would you ask?
No, I would not, because I would leave it up to them to know if it was serious enough that I should be aware of it within the sequence, so that maybe I do look at them through some of the poses that I think, and then I can tell them to stop. But leaving it up to them to tell me of their seriousness according to how they perceive it, it should be resulting all on them, because they're coming.
Finish, sorry.
No, I was going to just elaborate there.
So you said it's up to them to maybe let you know the seriousness in the class, or maybe at the start, or not in an actual physical saying thing.
No, they if it is a serious enough injury that warrants the teacher or the yoga instructor to know about it, it is up to them to say either beforehand or during. Again, if they're too shy to say before, and the injury does come up, there's no shame in going, and there's no shame in saying, listen, I actually do have an injury. I can't push myself any further, and then I'll tell you to sit down, or they can sit down themselves. But ultimately, they're the ones that are going to be putting themselves in the position to injure themselves, and therefore responsibility should be on them.
Okay, I see a lot of nodding heads. So I get a lot of, yeah, I'm kind of on the same page that I think we need to empower students to be in charge of their own body, right? I saw a lot of nodding heads. You can also do this if you're not, but I'm just saying I saw some nodding heads. Let's quickly just go to Raquel. I've got a lot of hands. Don't worry, we're getting there. Okay, cool, Raquel.
Okay. So I just have a comment to add, really. It's not like long or anything, but the whole point is that you should be consulting your health practitioner before you go into any sort of physical activity. If you have a big issue, and then if it's just like muscular pain from previous exercise, I think that's fine for me to know, but there's not really much, that I can maybe just say, like, don't put too much pressure on it, but there's not really so much good advice that will really change their injury or fix it, right? Because there's nothing that we physically can do or tell them to do that's going to, make it necessarily better. And I think that's the problems, that sometimes people come to yoga thinking that we're going to be able to solve the issue, but actually that's not how it works. It's we cannot fix a problem in one class. It's going to take time, and if we don't know the full, like, you need to sign a piece of paper maybe and have like everything jotted down, right? Like, do you have this, like have a whole worksheet, and then maybe I could work from that in a private, but not in a big class. So yeah.
I'm just gonna pinpoint. After everyone speaks, I might just highlight some factors. So what Raquel said is, the first question was if they consulted their health professional. I didn't consult a health professional before I did yoga. Of course, I didn't have anything major, but I wondered, that's always on your liability form. Make sure you consult your medical professional before starting any exercise routine. And I've always wondered, I wonder if anyone does that. Maybe someone can feed to that as to whether they did. Of course, major injuries, you go to a doctor, you say, hey doc, look, I'm thinking of starting some yoga. Do you think it's a good idea? He says yay or nay. You come to yoga now, what do you do? Another thing Raquel said there is that we're not going to fix people, right? Okay. People come to yoga for various reasons. All right. We know everyone is drawn to their mat for a different reason. I think something that's really important for us as yoga teachers, which was pretty much underlying to what Raquel said there, is that we're not health professionals. We don't treat injury. We definitely don't diagnose an injury for various reasons. I mean, obviously we are not qualified to do that. We don't have the skill set to do that. Is anyone here a physio or a biokineticist? Doctors? We always have one on the group. All right, so if we had to ask someone like that, that's a whole different story. But even then, you have a role as this and you have a role as that. But lots of people have yoga as a healing modality. But I'm not a healer. I'm not here to fix your injury, probably because if you said you had pes anserine bursitis, I would also have the same response as Candice and go, what did your doctor say you can or can't do, right? Okay, so I just want to highlight this. So we have to then, we'll chat about this later if it comes up more. What does it mean to diagnose and what does it mean to treat? Okay, because I think we need to have super clear boundaries as a yoga teacher to know what is our role as a teacher and where do we draw the line. All right, and that line is becoming narrower and narrower as the yoga world starts talking about this more. Suddenly it starts to become a very fine line. I think it was Dasha and then Fiona.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute. Now, I just wanted to actually ask you, do you let people sign indemnity form, or does the studio do that where, if they hire, because even though you try to protect people, but you also want to be protected yourself, if somebody comes and says they've made injury in your class, because you can't stop that, as you say. If somebody's got problems, even if they tell you, you're not a medical.
So let's talk about those forms, right? Everyone's been to a studio, you sign a waiver, right? You go in, you write, this is my name, this is my emergency contact, very generic, something similar to that you sign to the gym. They say, what are your injuries? You write it down there, you sign in, you pay your money, you go into your class. And I mean, the question is, I'll sorry, add to that, Stefan?
No, is that supposed to be for every yoga class?
Most of the time, studios will definitely have it in place. Have you been to a class where that didn't happen?
I've only ever been to 2 classes, and like they did it. So
they didn't. Okay. Look, it's not. We'll probably chat about this at the end of the course. Is that yoga's, you can get insurance as a yoga teacher, right? You can go ahead and get public liability, which is what some studios have. However, it's not absolutely essential. It's not needed. A waiver or a liability form is definitely a way to protect yourself, especially in our South African climate. If we compare South African nature to American yoga, where America, people are suing all the time for everything, right? It's not really the kind of culture that we get in South Africa. However, that shouldn't make us complacent, right? They shouldn't make us be like, do whatever you want. Okay, no problem. No liability on me. I'm the teacher. You just do what you want. And if it happens, sorry, right? But however, if we're in a space where we can empower our students to take control of their body, that's okay. But if we're asking on the forms now, hey, do you have any medical injuries? Suddenly there's 10 people coming in the class. I wonder, is the class starting? Is the teacher going, sorry guys, I'm just going to quickly go read all your forms here and read your medical history. And then within the space of a minute, I'm going to prep you and tell you what modifications and, give you all the props that you need. And also it's got 1 minute and I need to start my class on time. Wowzers. I'm going to walk in there with like a super anxious state, right? But just to give you guys that viewpoint. So Dasha, yes, usually signing forms is the thing that is usually happening. Fiona?
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, is it not our responsibility in this, as we become yoga instructors, in the sequencing and the prep for our class, we think through the skeletal and the muscular impact, that when we actually then teaching it, we can cue for where it could be creating some sort of pain due to injury, because we don't know what type of injury if we don't ask the question, and then are able to almost more generally prompt for alternative or support.
So let's say this is our class. We're in the studio. We're not online, just to make it easier. And Fiona's teaching. Fiona's a teacher. Yay. And Hader says, you say, what injuries do you have? And Hader says, oh, I've got a knee injury. And Anna says, her Achilles tendon is really sore. And then Melissa says, she's got a bit of a rotator cuff. And then Marlene comes in and she's got something spicy, like I even wrote this down, osteochondritis dissecans. Then what? Because I'm only saying this because it will happen, right? Let's say you teach a class. I mean, we know amongst our groups, right, certain injuries or niggles can be somewhat not irregular. It can be quite a common occurrence. So let's just put it forward. I'm giving you a massive, far end scenario here, Fiona. So no means to put you on the spot. You don't have to have an answer. But let's say, you've got 10 different injuries. What would your response be after they say, these are my different injuries? What do you think you would say? I mean, you haven't done this yet, but what would you maybe say?
No, in my scenario, I'm not asking them. Well, in my question, I'm saying it's we set up the class without asking, but prepare for, we know what sequence we're going to do and where it could create some degree of discomfort based on what weight you're using, what stability you're using, and how we've created the sequence, so we could anticipate certain ailments as a result. You know, like, so when I was doing my video, which was a horrific experience, my guinea pig had a knee operation like 3 months ago, and which made it very inconvenient for me to carry on with the rest of the sequence. But it made me think about, you know, I didn't ask him beforehand. I should know because he's my husband. But it definitely created this platform for me to now think through, holy shit, what do you do when you're faced with that scenario? Or how do you know your sequence better to prepare for that sort of thing? Because I could have made his experience far better had I not, you know, got to the third phase of the sequence and then realized he actually can't lift his back knee like that because he can't put his weight on it. I should have known that.
So just to give Fiona some credit, like that was your first class that you've taught, okay? I mean, I'll disregard the fact that it was your husband, but for example, what do you do, Fiona? What do you do like other than yoga? That's what I'm asking.
No, yeah, I run the marketing. Well,
you work
run the Shoprite Checkers. Yeah, I'm corporate, so I basically fight for a living.
So do you guys think, and I mean, maybe Stefan was going to answer this, if you were going to respond, were you going to respond to Fiona or bring up something different?
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask a question and then maybe make a funny observation. Just like, it depends, like, because we're training now to be yoga teachers, or like to teach yoga. We're not training how to be yoga teachers specifically for people with injury, unless that is like a route that you want to go. If that's like kind of what I wanted, that's kind of what I wanted to ask with your, like, with somebody coming in later with an injury. And being a guy, this is not a shout out, this is my quirky comment that I just like feel like I should say. Like, your husband not telling you and making it to the third stage, that kind of sounds like, oh, like I don't want to tell you so that I can get out of it.
Maybe. So you know, so Stefan wasn't really a question, but more so an observation, is that as teachers, as yoga teachers, do we need to know what an injury is and how to work with it in a yoga class? I'm going to use the word work with it. I mean, you can think of Fiona's case. So someone comes in, she doesn't ask, and they go, oh, my knee's sore. What, you know, in the middle of class, right? Because for you, it came up in maybe the third pose, they came into the knees and they said, oh, my knee's a bit sore. Then what do we do, right? In the middle of the flow. What do you guys think? I'm not saying what would you do because you haven't been in that situation. I'm going to ask Sarah just because she had her hand up earlier. We'll come to you, Dasha, after if you have something more to add.
I completely agree with Stefan slightly. I've had a really dodgy shoulder for about 6 months to a year, and it just felt really dodgy. But I told Laura beforehand, and I actually believe it's my responsibility to go and see someone. So I went to see a shoulder specialist, and touch wood, thank goodness it's fine, it's just tight. But that was my responsibility to go and not fix it, but see what the problem was. And then I know that Laura now knows, she kind of knows of the injury, but she would never, we can't say, okay, do this, because then we might make the injury worse. So I think we just as teachers must just cue and say, if something's niggling you or hurting you, then just relax a little bit. Don't go into the pose so much. We can't tell them, I don't think we can tell them what to do. I think we must just tell them that we must listen to our own bodies. Because that's what I constantly do with my shoulder. I just listen to my body, and if it's hurting or it's tiring, then I just go into child's pose, or I go into a different position as such. But I don't think we're not doctors, so we don't want to make the injury worse by giving them something that we think is right, but actually might not be right for their specific injury.
You want to add to that, Nicole? Oh, Nicole put it.
Yeah. Sorry, yes, I do want to add to that. I am a teacher, and on a weekly basis, I get my students telling me, oh, I've got this sore, I've got that sore. And I always say, well, maybe give it a little bit of a rest and maybe go see your doctor. And if they don't have one, I give them my contact. Because I don't know, don't you think it's opening yourself up if that person says they fill in a form and they say they've got a knee injury or they've got a neck injury or a back injury, and then they hurt themselves doing your classes, doesn't that open you up to liability? And just a thought.
That's a good question. If someone says, hey, I have a sore shoulder, and you instruct puppy's pose, and I hurt my shoulder, and I say, but she knew I had a sore shoulder, and now I'm injured. Does that, I'm not saying it does or it doesn't, do you think that somewhat makes she more liable or more responsible for that?
I think we, as going into class, we are liable for ourselves.
Oh, sorry, Sarah, we keep losing.
But I guess it depends also on age. Like if you're,
say that again. We got you.
I think for kind of our age, the older age group, we are responsible for our own bodies. So we go in there and that's our responsibility. I guess you have to just be more careful when it comes to kids and adolescents. But I guess, like Nicole said, if they're hurting, then you just gonna say, okay, go and see your physio or whatever. That's what I do with my kids. I just send them to physio because it's not my responsibility to fix them.
So yeah, I like what Sarah said there. It's not our responsibility to fix them. It's not our responsibility to definitely diagnose them. I mean, sorry, I have to add, I studied occupational therapy for 4 years. I worked for 3 years. I'm not allowed to diagnose anyone. And I have a health professional's degree, but by my scope of practice, I'm not allowed to diagnose, right? Medical doctors diagnose. So I think I want to ask you guys, what is it? Because I think we need to be really clear. If we say, what does it mean to diagnose? It's not a doctor saying, oh, hey, I think you've got this or this or this. Sometimes it's not quite as black and white as that, right? I've seen it, happen quite a bit in yoga. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to put this hypothetical situation. Maybe Dasha, do you want to ask it before I give an example? Maybe you'll lead us straight into it.
No, just an opinion actually, because I think I am against asking people because it feels to me like you taking over the responsibility. But yet from a client's perspective, when I was in class and I did tell the teacher my back, I've got problems with my back, and then she would tell me, okay, you can alter it this way. I really appreciated it. And I think it made me come back to her class more because she would. So I think from a client's perspective, it's nice, yeah.
And how do we, let's say, for example, the teacher, you say, I've got a bit of a back injury. She says, do this. How does she know what it is without knowing the exact symptoms, conditions that you're experiencing, right? Because my back pain might be different to your back pain, might be different to Anna's. Do you think she's giving us the same advice or unique advice? And where's that advice coming from? Where did she learn it, right? Just questions. I'm just stirring the pot. What do you
the bottom line is you're responsible for yourself, for your body.
Did she say that? Did she say something along those lines?
No, actually not, but I think she should have, yeah.
So how would you maybe word it, if you were in the same situation, how would you maybe word it to your students?
I think the old good, listen to your body, don't go into pain.
So this brings up another conversation, and I was hoping someone would say it because now I'm going to open another can of worms and we haven't closed the previous one yet. But let's say, and that's the thing about this, right? It's like every time we say something, we're like, but, and I mean, it sounds like you're having a conversation with Catherine now, right? Because she's always like, but it depends, right? So let's say, if we say, oh, don't go there, if you feel pain, I mean, pain is completely subjective, all right? How do we know what pain feels like? How do they know what pain feels like? Is it, are we really going to go through a whole class without feeling any pain? Like if I say don't feel pain, like I'm almost making it like, I'm kind of like catastrophizing it. Like, oh my gosh, if you go too far in your back bend, like you're going to feel pain. And then people are like, oh my gosh, no, pain, back, right? It seems a bit dramatic, right? So, someone else, I'm just asking because Dasha used the word pain and someone else used the word discomfort. So in itself, how do I know what pain is? Like someone might be like, ow, no, it's not painful. It's a bit uncomfortable. Someone might have a little niggle and be like, oh, it's so painful. But pain has a connotation of it being like extreme. We think someone goes, oh, it's painful. And you're like, oh, leave the class. No, sorry, no yoga for you. Go see your doctor. Meanwhile, it's like, yeah, right? Because we don't know. I don't know what's happening in any student's body. I can't tell them their experience of their pain. I'm going to go over to Raquel, but I don't even know if she was speaking about this topic or the previous one.
Well, I can shoot in with this one first. Actually, a friend told me this, because she's a Pilates teacher, and she always in her class will say, if you feel any sharp shooting pains, that's when you you retract, you come back to the previous pose or come back into a more comfortable pose, but don't stay where you are, right? And she won't give you like too many alternatives, but I think it's more like retracting, like taking a step back into your previous pose, or just coming out of it completely, I guess. But sharp shooting pains is like the big one. And then I think regardless of whether it's an injury or niggle, if it's a niggle, it's still extremely discomforting, then come out of it. It's not like, maybe it won't give you an injury, but it's certainly something that might stress, your muscles a bit more. Then coming back to my previous thing that I initially put my hand up for, was I noticed like in all our poses that we study, it tells you exactly, avoid it if there's back injuries, avoid this if someone's got a headache. So this is, if you're preparing a sequence, you should know the possible effects that this could have on someone who maybe has a headache or maybe has back pain, and then just to kind of tell them not to go into that rather than telling them what to go into, because I think giving them a suggestion of what to go into that you're not too sure is going to work is a bit more scary than to just tell them not to do it.
So would you tell them to not do the pose?
I wouldn't say not do. I say if you're feeling it's quite straining, rather don't do that pose, and come out of it. I know it's not ideal.
Like let's look at an example of a pose so we can all picture it in our head. Let's look at low lunge. Easy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's say low lunge. I'm putting Raquel on the spot just because she's answering all the questions. Thank you for
providing a kneeling low lunge.
Yeah, let's say a kneeling low lunge, and let's say that scenario.
Okay, well then to come out of it, you would come into the back of your mat, come into reverse, straighten your front leg, and then bend the back to just kind of like get that knee. I would say.
Let's say the bottom knee.
The bottom knee
that's on the floor.
The one that's on the. That's not sharp shooting pains generally, though. Isn't that just like?
They do, right? People have weird. I have sharp shooting pain in my knee when it's on the floor. You don't anything can come up in a class because anyone can have any kind of somatic experience or any experience in their body on that day, right? So my question is to you, do I tell them to come out of the pose? Do I say don't do the pose? Or Hader, what do you think? What do I say? And then Sakile, I wanted to come to you as well.
Oh, sorry, I'll stop then.
Sorry, Raquel, we'll come back to you. I lost track. But keep that in mind.
Can't you tell them to place a pillow under the knee or something soft, if that is and see if it's better?
Okay, so we can give them a modification as it comes up. That's one option. Sakila, did you have the same one?
Yes, I think I was also going to say that we let them know that we are offering suggestions and not definite answers. So you say, try this, but if it doesn't work, then, like that. So we let them know that this is not definite. Is your back sore? Okay, try this or try this. If you're still feeling discomfort, then maybe don't do this pose. So that way it's sort of, you're letting them know that we're working together here. I don't have all the answers, so you're working with me.
So that's quite nice in a private, right? When you're working one-on-one, or you may be working in a place where you determine your own pace of your class. But to some extent in a vinyasa flow, I mean, you guys have been practicing your sequences, right? They don't stop moving. And I'm talking from experience. You're doing a pose and you're getting them into a pose and you're giving this one, maybe I suggest this could work for you, and the person here is going like, oh my gosh, can I just move on to the next pose, please? Or you're holding one side a bit longer than the other. How do we navigate that in a flowing class that's moving, right? Because you don't have a lot of time in the poses to, I mean, let's speak about this specific style, because you guys could leave and teach a lot slower. It's not wrong. I'm just saying in a class setting as an example.
So you ask in the beginning. You do both. You ask in the beginning, and then you let them know that, listen to your body, all of that. If you can speak really fast and it's going quickly, and it's in the class, and they're like me, like, try this.
So I'm going to start my class, and I'm going to say, according to our general discussion thus far, all right, guys, if you feel any discomfort, do less, back off. But if you feel pain in your knee, you can prop it up with a thing. If you feel pain on your wrist, then maybe just take this variation.
No,
right? But I'm just saying, I think there are so many things that people will walk into your studio with. So let's say I'm being really dramatic. It doesn't always happen like that. But I've taught a lot of older practitioners, and it does happen like that. This one's like, no, sorry, my wrist, my shoulder. This one's got a knee. That one's got an ankle. This one says she's feeling dizzy when she's upside down. That person says, oh, you know what? I've got a migraine. What? How do we as teachers navigate that, right? Are we now responsible for making sure everyone has a beautiful, pleasant yoga experience without any discomfort? Or, you know, are we going to be running around frantically saying, you do this, you do this? I mean, just to be realistic, if we're in that setting. I mean, maybe some of you guys can experience, I'll get to you now, Alicia, but, you know, think back to months ago when we were in studios and life was beautiful. What that might have been like, you know, think back to your experience, and did you notice something? How did it make you feel? And just think back. Maybe you want to add something, Alicia?
I was just thinking that in a flow, it's obviously very fast, but if you give them options as you go, like place your knee on the floor or raise your knee, and maybe let them feel what feels better, and then they can decide for the next round. But I'm also thinking, now that you brought up the online thing, is online has kind of changed all of that, because when you do yoga online, they don't ask these questions. You just do, and you take responsibility for your own practice.
I mean, a lot of that is that the teacher can't see you anymore. I mean,
yeah.
Well, not as well as what they do in the studio anyway. But I mean, it raises the question again, like, do we ask them or do we not ask them? In fact, I'm going to send you guys, I was listening to a podcast this week. I'm sure Catherine has mentioned Jason Crandall, teacher in the States. Him and his wife have a podcast called Yoga Land. Have you guys heard it? Okay, cool. Yoga Land. It's a little blue symbol. It says Yoga Land. It's pretty simple. They recently did a whole podcast topic on it. And he said, these are my pros. These are my cons. This is why I think it makes sense to ask. This is why I make sense for it not to. Well, this is why I can understand why you should not ask. Okay, cool. Let's discuss about it. What do you as teachers think? What are you going to do when you move out into the world? All right. They're taking into account the big climate in America. They have a lot of heated conversations as to, do you ask, do you not ask? Do you adjust? Do you not adjust? Right? So they're really putting forward those conversations that us as teachers can really go, okay. Up until now, in every class I've been to, they've asked me my injury. Why? Do I do it just because I see every other teacher do it? Do I do it because the studio or the gym says I have to? Or what do I believe as a teacher, right? I can tell you what I believe. I can tell you what Wellness Connection and Catherine believes. But, you know, essentially, we also need to start thinking like, okay, can I really start to question what's been happening and make the best informed decision for myself and my students? One of the things that came up there was, he was saying, okay, let's say someone says to you, I've got a shoulder injury, and you say, okay, let's say they come up and they offer that information, and you say, okay, I would encourage you to listen to your body. And if you feel any discomfort, then back off. Someone comes up to you and they say, I've got a knee injury. And you say, you know what, when we're in the class, if you feel any discomfort, then I would suggest you listen to your body and back off. And he was saying it about 10 times. And he says, why do I have to have that conversation with everyone every time? If I start my class as an example and say, okay, cool. If you feel any discomfort, back off, you know, and there we go. I haven't been informed with all of your injuries, but I've given you the same message from me as a teacher, right? Because if you're expecting, if Alicia has an injury and she's expecting something from me, I don't have the necessary skill set to maybe give her, you know, every single adjustment. Sure, she can say do less. Do you feel any discomfort? Are you okay? She says, I'm fine. You go, cool. Okay. She's listened to her body. She's backed off. She's fine. Hopefully. Right? So there's a big thing in turning that conversation and saying, you're in charge of your body. I think you should, and it's not always an easy thing to listen to your body, right? I don't know if you guys, it takes some time. What do you guys think?
Just back on the asking, not asking. I've also realized in the last few weeks when I was trying to teach, that asking might open a psychological thing for people, because if you don't focus, if you don't ask and you don't focus on the injury, they might not even think about it. And when they start thinking about it, because my friend, for example, has got an ankle problem and it's been an issue for more than a year, and not once did I bring it up, not once did she bring it up, and she managed to do Warrior 3 with that ankle with no issue, with no pain or discomfort, you know. So when you ask, you do open the floor for people to make their problems yours, and just like therapy, you know, or healing, or so
I wonder whether, and I think another question to ask all of you guys, and there's just so many questions, write them down and dream about it tonight probably. But oh man, I forgot my question. What did you just say? Oh, okay. So let's say you're in a class. The question I was going to ask is, it's gone. Okay, it'll come to me later. Someone else take over and I will bring that thought back to mind. Yes, Sarah.
I agree with what you just said. I think we just must go in, don't even ask any questions, don't even get anything in writing to say what injuries you have, because then that opens another can of worms. Just go into class and say, if anyone's feeling any niggles or discomfort, just come out of the position. And that's all we're willing to do. That's what I feel. Because I feel otherwise we're opening a massive can of worms.
But just coming back to what Sarah said is don't do it. If I'm teaching a triangle pose and someone says, oh, my knee's sore, just come out of triangle pose, just stand there and watch us, and then you can join us on the next pose, right? I've seen students do that. Oh no, okay, no triangle for me. I can never do triangle. It's bad for my knee, and never gonna, whatever the case may be, you know, like suddenly we feel like, no, don't do the pose, it's gonna hurt your knee. And then we end up in that whole like catastrophizing thing where people are like, I can't do yoga, I've got bad knees. And then it's like shame, you know, as an example, because you'll get people that will take one thing and run with it, right? Because how often do we move? I mean, okay, I'm not going to get into a pain discussion because you guys will probably chat about this a bit with Catherine, is that's a whole different thing. Everyone's got their own subjective view of it, you know. Some people have different tolerances. Catherine might do 85 handstands and say, it's a bit sore, and I do 85 handstands and I'm like, I can't feel my arms. So does that mean I shouldn't do handstands? You know, it's different, right? I've got to decide if it's discomfort and I don't want to, I'll come out. Is it a discomfort? Am I the kind of person that's like, it's discomfort, but it's okay? You know, that we don't know what the other person is experiencing in their body, and we want to give them that empowerment. So, you know, like someone asked some questions like, okay, if it's sharp shooting pain, maybe that's an indicator, all right? But now I'm projecting, I'm like planting that in their mind to some extent. It's whoo, guys, this is what we're going to be discussing for another 2 hours. Imagine. So what do we think now? I mean, it's a tricky one, right? Yes, Kamal?
So I'm going back to something that Fiona said, where you actually come into a class and sort of have this general blanket statement, because you've got your sequence in mind, you know the bigger muscle parts that's going to be influenced or that you'll be using. What if you walked into a class without telling them what your actual theme is or what peak pose you're working up to, but sort of give them an idea that today we're going to focus a lot on because we're doing our forward bend sequence, we're going to be focusing a lot on warming up and strengthening our legs or our hamstrings or our knees or our ankles. So if you do have any niggly bits in those areas, maybe just listen to your body, maybe take a step back, maybe breathe, or maybe just put yourself into a more neutral pose like child pose. But then as this conversation went on, I've now gotten to a point where do you draw the line between pushing a student to try and do better, to strengthen their body parts, versus telling them to back off because it's not a good idea to move any further or to push any harder? Because in this teaching program, like I struggle with back bends, but I've chosen a back bend as a peak pose sequence because I'm aiming to strengthen my back. You see, so I want to do more back bends. So how do we decipher, or how do we find that line between telling your student that you got to work harder to strengthen it, or you got to back off because it's just not a good idea?
Do we decide that as teachers?
No, I think that it actually boils down to the individual, you know. So I think that also goes back to all the guys that said that the onus is on the individual. The responsibility is yours. Can you or can you not do it? And what I've noticed a lot in Lourdes' classes is that she, throughout the sequence, she often says, listen to your body. So it's not just said once at the start of the class, it's said throughout the sequence, reminding people, I suppose, that if you are pushing a little too hard, just listen to your body and back off a bit. I don't know.
I'm going to come to Stefan now. Yeah, right. I mean, you kind of like planting seeds in everyone's mind here. So this time around, Kamal said, back off a bit. And previously she said, step back a bit. Just don't say step back, because otherwise they might literally step back on their mat physically. I mean, words are important, right? You guys are learning this now. You're doing your sequence. If you say something and then you're like, oh, that's not what I meant, but that's what my student's doing. Okay, I must think about the words I'm using, because sometimes what we say is not what they mean. And then also, if I'm in you also said, more neutral position as a child's pose. I mean, it depends, right? If I have a knee injury, it might not feel good for me to come into a child's pose, right? So it's, then we also start to say, and people say it a lot, if it's had too much, come into a child's pose. Man, guys, child's pose is not that nice sometimes. If you, certain injuries, maybe you got stiffness, it's not always an accessible pose to everyone. So, but I mean, guys, I've been teaching for 5 years, and I only started to question these things around last year, because we're all trained in a certain way, but we're also training ourselves to be like, wonder why I'm thinking that. I wonder why I say that. as a teacher, right? So if I say come into this pose, it might not feel good in your body. You might be like, geez, I'd rather just be there with the discomfort rather than in my child's pose. Who knows, right? But they might not say it because they're like, oh, this is supposed to be this way, or it should, or it's whatever the case may be. Stefan?
When it comes to pushing students, should that not then be like once, like let's say you only really push students or people that you have seen in your class after like a set amount of times? So if it is like a relatively small class and you only have 10 people in, and this one person has come in and you've watched him through a couple of sequences, let's say about 5 to 10, then you can kind of get a judge just by having them within the class. So then you can only start offering really like personalized advice, saying like, okay, cool, I've seen what you can do over this past period of time. Like, I know that you can go a bit more, because then by that time an injury probably has come up, if they have got one, and if they haven't, then you've at least seen and sussed out the situation a bit more.
Does anyone have something to add to that? So just to answer your question, is like, when do we know when to challenge? It's kind of feeding on what Kamal said, right? It's like, I don't know. My question is, why are they coming to a yoga class, right? I might be coming because I want to chill. This person might come because they're like, come on, I want to learn a handstand. That person's like, oh, hey, I really want to work on my hamstrings, right? Just because this is just, if I come into Stefan's class and he's like, I know Taryn can do a handstand, maybe I don't want to, So I'm saying if a student is coming to you one-on-one and says, this is what I want, this is, these are my intentions, and you're very clear with that. I think in a group setting, it's kind of hard to know, right? And I think we also, in part of empowering students, is also letting them decide how they want to show up on that day. I mean, I was on a yin training with Carla. I don't think you guys are with Carla on this training. So she does a 5-day yin training at the studio. I was just with her, and something that really stuck with me is teaching students how to fly their own plane, which I think is, it's more adapted to the yin yoga, which is what we'll chat about on another class. But she's like, I'm not in your body. I don't know if how you're feeling today. I don't know what happened just before you came into class. I don't know if you're tired or happy or excited, or I don't know if you went for a run this morning, or whether you've been sitting on the couch. So do you want to be challenged or not? If you're in a private class and he says, yes, I want it, but maybe they don't. So just because we as teachers know they can do more, it shouldn't always be on us to say, I know you can do more. I don't know, just a counter thought. Another teacher, Catherine, might say, no, I know you can do this, or, maybe yes, maybe no. I think it's really dependent per person, right? I don't know, you guys, I mean, you can totally disagree with me. You can bring it up to the table. I'm not saying I'm always right. I don't think there's not always black and white. I mean, it depends on your students. It depends on you as a teacher. It depends what you're teaching. It depends where you're teaching. It's not easy, right? So some of you guys will go into a gym and they'll say, there's a certain procedure. If you go to a gym, you need to be there. You need to introduce yourself. They want to follow a certain structure, and that's what they want in their space. And so sometimes you kind of have to fit into that mold of studios. Sometimes you go to a studio and they've got noble silence, which means you aren't allowed to speak in the studio. So someone can't come talk to you about something because it's silent. And so it's not just about whether we say yes or no. It's like, now in what studio or what setting are we teaching it, right? I really want to just come back to, just emphasizing like our role as yoga teachers, right, is to teach yoga. So I'm going to propose this question again, and then we're going to go through a little bit of an activity, and then we'll see how it goes. And then you guys can go and think about this for the rest of your teaching career, because you will, and you'll change your mind and you'll come back. My question was going to be, someone comes up and offers information and says, I have a rotator cuff injury in my right shoulder. What can I do? Who wants to answer? You don't have to give what I've been saying. You can say your own answer. It's fine. You know, taking your own initiative as a teacher into it. Who maybe wants to be the teacher? Everyone's like, nope, I'm not teaching anymore. Not doing it. What do you guys think? You know, you can leave this whole thing and not have made up your mind. You can still have your same opinion. I think it's just good to question it. Guys, I have a rotator cuff. Okay, cool. Shakira is going to help me with my rotate. I do have a slide.
Perhaps you can just say, I'll do some research and then I'll come back to you if you're not sure.
But let's say I come, what research are you going to do? You're going to go home and you're going to sit for hours. You might as well just become a therapist in 4 years' time. You know what I mean? And then you'll still say, not in the yoga studio, come see me for a consultation, right? Because essentially, if you're then researching it, you're diagnosing or you're treating it. Because why else would you need to know the symptoms unless you wanted to treat it, right? It's the same as someone who comes in. I don't know. I'm just, you know, that's just my view on it, because now suddenly Shakira's taken the pressure. Someone's going to come back and say, Shakira, did you do the research? Can you tell me what I must do now? You're going to go, damn it, I need to come up with another excuse. Oh, sorry, I didn't research. Come back next week. And then you're going to go week on week. But it's the same as some people come in and they say, I've got pain. I've got pain in my knee. You know, sometimes we get teachers say, oh, where is it? And you go, oh, it's here. I mean, if they can. Sometimes they're like, I don't know, it's just in there somewhere, because people don't really know their injuries. They haven't gone to a doctor. They haven't gone to a physio. They just say, it's sore. Maybe I know where it's sore. Maybe I don't. And then, you know, we can't go, okay, is it sore under the knee? Okay, what happens when you straighten? What happens when you bend? No, I'm not a physio. I can't. Then I'm going to go, I wonder if that is your meniscus. I wonder. Oh my gosh, guys. You are just walking yourself into it. And it's, I think as teachers, we all want to help, right? We're here because we love it. We like working with people. We like working with bodies. It's not to take away from that. I think it's just really, really important to know where we lie, right? Because if as soon as someone goes, you know, but my yoga teacher said that I have a slipped disc in my spine. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? This poor like chiropractor is going to say, don't ever go to a yoga classes again. I don't know. It's never happened. This isn't a true story. I'm just asking, right? So it's the only reason we have this perception is because we've obviously heard it before. We've obviously seen teachers do it, or we've asked a teacher, or where else would we have this idea if we hadn't experienced it before? And sometimes we don't question what we experienced before. We're like, that's just how it is. And that's okay. And we do, you guys are right. You're studying yoga, you're learning more about the body, all right? But we've also, when you guys finish here, you're going to have done this for about 6 weeks. And we still don't have the capacity to, well, we definitely don't. Yeah, Alicia says, doctors don't always have the answer, so how can we? I mean, I hope you guys know a doctor that has the answer. Find another doctor. No, but it's true, right? I had a sore hip last year. And if I went to my, let's say I had gone to a physio and I go to my, and she went, okay, I went to a sports physician, they diagnosed, went to a physio. If I went to my yoga teacher and I say, okay, I've got a sore hip, and she said, oh, what is it? And I said, oh, you know, the physio said this and they said this, and now they're thinking this, but I'm treating it like this, because really that is often what the case is like. You know, you're going treatment, I'm rehabilitating it. They say I mustn't do this, but they say I must do this. The yoga teacher is going to say, okay, well, you just do you, you know, you look after yourself. And if you feel discomfort, do less, back off. All right. Go see your physio, right? That's kind of, it's kind of a good view to have on it. It's kind of the way Wellness Connection tries to view it, because we're not here to fix bodies. If you do want to fix bodies, physiotherapy or biokinetics, it's only a 5-year degree. You can do it. And then but then you'll still say, like I said, if someone asks you in a yoga class, you're still going to say, nope, come see me, because you can't It's just not appropriate. Where health professionals, they talk about this on the podcast too. Health professionals are also governed by a code of conduct. You know what you can, where you know what you can do, what you can't do, where can you do it. You know, you can't walk around on the street and say, oh, you got a headache. Geez, I wonder if it's your neck muscle here. Maybe I just trigger pointed right here on the spot. No problem, right? There's certain actions governing that kind of behavior. So a lot of therapists, you know, they won't even bring their therapy into the yoga space or bring their yoga into the therapy space because they're different scopes of practice. Marlene.
So I think just coming back to with your rotator cuff issue now and whatnot, you know, when people say something, I think sometimes perhaps one of the best ways is, you know, have you seen a physician? Have you seen anyone or whatever? Do you understand what is going on with your body and, you know, how you can move and all of that? And then, okay, yes, so listen to yourself and kind of just do that. But I kind of have a counter to what Carmel was saying earlier, you know, in terms of, you know, when do you tell someone to back off or, you know, kind of for them to push a bit further? I mean, my question is more so, you know, sometimes you can kind of see when someone is pushing themselves a bit too far or too much, and in overexerting themselves, you know, so where do you then start drawing that line where it's like, okay, you know, it's kind of just back off a little bit, like I can see you overdoing it.
How would you know if they're exerting themselves too much?
Well, yeah. And
I mean, what do you guys think? How would you know? If you say you can see it, what would you see?
Well, for starters, if you're saying it's going to a high lunge and they're not able to hold the high lunge, then they're overexerting themselves. If they're shaking too much and they're not staying up and wobbling all over the place, clearly I can see, listen, dude, go down on your knees. You know, rather keep, because you want to keep somewhat of a good posture and structure within the pose, so that, you know, it's like you do want to get in that. So by overexerting yourself, if they're not able to at least retain some sort of variation of the pose, then their body is not able to get in it, and them trying would be then overexerting.
Well,
because
yes,
they're overexerting what the body can kind of do.
I mean, I'm gonna just always say maybe, because I mean, maybe yes, but maybe they're fine in the lunge. Maybe they're like, I'm wobbly and this is hard, but I want to be here and I'm working, right? I don't know.
Often, well, see, I think people do that sometimes. Well, it's human nature, because if you're in a class setting, you know, you don't want to look like you can't do something. So you start pushing yourself more because, you know, you feel embarrassed not being able to do what everyone else does. So then it's, I don't know, it's like, it's just,
well, it's still up to the student. The student is deciding whether there's an ego involved and I'm gonna go into full lotus because my neighbor's doing it, or whether I'm gonna back off because I know in my practice it doesn't feel nice. That decision's still coming down to me. I've made that. Marlene can tell me, hey, Taryn, I don't think you should do lotus. I can go home and still do lotus because I'm like, haha, stop watching, whatever the case may be, right? People will always do what they want to do. You might say, don't feel pain. And someone's like, meh, I'm going to do what I want to do. You always, I'm saying that because you will always have someone who is, you know, like in a hot yoga class, we can't say, oh, you look like you're overexerting. Man, anyone's overexerting in a hot yoga if it's hard, right? I'm still, you know, I can't hold a pose in a heated room and maintain my breath and do lunges, or, you know, because it's a challenge, but I'm not in like pain or discomfort. I'm okay. But if a teacher comes to me and says, oh, don't do this, you look tired, then I'm going to be like, oh, drama, can't do high lunges. Hot yoga is not for me. I mean, I'm taking it to another extreme, but I think that's the case. You know, in a hot yoga, someone might be completely red in the face and breathing really deeply. Maybe they're still okay, right? I mean, hot yoga is another story. She's like, are you laughing, she? Are you just... Oh, sorry guys. I really only wanted to speak about this for 45 minutes, and we've been here for over, and I really want to show you guys something. So she just says, I think if it's really painful or discomfort, automatically you will take it back off. I wouldn't ask. So once again, you wouldn't even say if it's painful, because what is pain? I mean, yes, you can say, oh, sharp shooting, back off. But generally discomfort is probably a better word, because it's letting the student decide for themselves, right? Yeah, look, I mean, we could definitely talk about this for ages, but I think essentially it's we need to start just questioning that in ourselves, right? So we're not taking on responsibility and saying, yes, I can fix your problems. I'm a yoga teacher. I studied anatomy for a month. Whatever, maybe you've been studying it for years. What even then, we don't know. I can't do an ultrasound and see what's happening in your hip. I can't even say, maybe this, maybe that, because I don't know. So it's not always the most ethical thing to take on that decision making. Right? So coming back, do we ask students whether they have injuries or not? Who says, yes, no. I'm still gonna ask Taryn. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to let you speak about it. Sarah's like, no, people are gonna come up to her and ask her, and she's just gonna put her hands like this, back off. Right? Think about it, guys. Like, I want to quickly show you guys, so I'm not going to, we don't have to go into who says what. You don't have to prove anything to me or prove anything to anyone else in your group. I think just think about it, right? There's sometimes no harm in a student coming up to you and wanting to disclose that in you and taking that upon yourself, but you will probably find you still have the same answer to say, listen to your body, back off. If you encourage students to be mindful, notice what your body feels like. Does it feel different to yesterday? Do you feel as though maybe your mind wants to go into this pose, or is your body ready for it? Can we ask questions that are empowering them so that they can have a good practice without you, setting them up for a lifetime of practice? All right. Just for the last 15 minutes, I just want to fly through something very, very, very quickly. This is, for example, someone's in a lunge and they say, my knee hurts. We don't go, where does it hurt? I wonder if it's your medial meniscus. What happens when we're just gonna, in a flow class, I do think it's very important that we have practical tools that says, whatever the case may be. I'm actually not going to show it to you. Let's say we're just going to chat through it and fly through it quickly. Let's say someone's in a plank pose and they say, my wrist hurts. What can we say? Yes, Melissa.
You can give them like the modification version where they can drop their knees.
Yeah, so by dropping their knees, we take off. Load, yeah, I heard it like a brief faint in the background. You're taking off load, so they're doing less. They're backing off, right? Let's say, for example, I mean, there's a lot of different variations you can do with that, but generally, backing off is a good thing. Okay, my knee is sore in a low lunge when my back knee's down. In Anjaneyasana, my bottom knee is sore. Discomfort. What can I do?
Roll the mat, add a cushion.
Yeah, so I'm providing support, a cushion, a foam, blankets if you have it, but I mean, like, who's got blankets? But you can double fold the mat. I mean, if you're going to be there for a while, don't fold the mat in breath. Okay, unfold the mat, come undone, whatever the case may be. Yes. What's another option in a lunge if I'm sore on my knee?
Get off your knee.
Yeah, so you make it a high lunge, but maybe yeah, it could be an option, but let's say in the flow there's another way. It's not wrong, but yeah, you'll lift your knee up, but then you'll be in a high lunge. Haida?
Don't go as far down as what you would have done. So bring your feet a bit closer together and just don't squat too far down.
So in an Anjaneyasana, if your front foot is forward and your back knee is down, set myself up. Okay, here's my lunge. My bottom knee is sore. What are you going to tell me to do?
You come back.
take your weight onto your ball of your foot, on your back foot.
That hurts my knee more. Well, but you can say, does it help? No? Okay, cool, go back. But generally, yes, if I'm forward, I can definitely lean back. I can definitely make my stance shorter. I can definitely prop up a foam. I can definitely do that. You know what I mean? There are options, and you see it's quick. And you know, the good thing is if you do show a student once, maybe the second time they do it when they come to your class without you saying that, all right? For my friend Christy, my shoulder hurts when I lift my arms up overhead. My arms hurt when I do this. My shoulder hurts. Or, I mean, how mountain? Oh, my shoulder hurts. What can I do?
You can maybe open a little bit more.
Oh. Does it feel better when you do this? Yeah. Cool. Do this. Does it feel better when you do this? Yes, do this. You got a sore shoulder, maybe go see your physio. Check what she can help you. Right? I had another good one here. Let me go back. My hamstring is sore when I'm folding forward.
Bend your
Yeah.
knees.
Okay, yeah, bend my knees, do less.
Do it seated.
Yeah, but in your flow of your class, you're going to be like halfway lift, Paschimottanasana, step back. No, but
Well,
in a different class you can. I'm just teasing. It's not a bad idea at all. Yeah, but you would still, in a Paschimottanasana, you would still bend your knees, support your knees. Let's say my hip is sore in squat. Someone comes into a Malasana and they go, this is painful or uncomfortable. This is not a very good squat. Let's say they're here. But what can we do? Yeah? Oh man, I can just, then it's like, maybe it helps. Maybe they go, doesn't help. Maybe they say, yes, it does help. Right? What would I say? If you feel any discomfort, you can do less. Maybe what else can I do to do less?
Well, widening the feet or putting the feet further apart works in that pose. So
Well, maybe this is better. This works. Does it feel better if it comes up? Yes, cool, do that. If it doesn't, no. I mean, you're not going to say no, you won't have the time to troubleshoot and say, does it feel better if you do this? Does it feel better? But, it might help to know. And to empower them, to just say, they come to you after and they say, look, my knee really hurts. I'm not going to say, okay, let's diagnose your problem. I'm just going to say, let's see what yoga pose might work for you. Well, you won't be able to do it in a class, but, where do you as a yoga teacher fill that role? What can you do for them without diagnosing them and seeing them for private yoga and rehabilitating their injury, right? Because we can't do that. Last one before we take a break. What do we do if someone, this is dramatic, but someone feels dizzy in class, really feeling dizzy and lightheaded?
Shavasana.
Would you say Shavasana?
Just lie down, go to bed, and we'll see you later.
Yeah.
lift the feet a bit.
Okay, so you can say, just take a seat, take a few breaths, join us when you're feeling a bit better. All right. You definitely can do that. I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah. See, we're not in a position to go, I wonder why you're feeling dizzy. Is it maybe because you haven't eaten? Is it this? No. We can just say, if you're feeling uncomfortable, take a seated position, back off. When you're feeling better, you can join us again. If it's in a hot yoga room, you can welcomely say, I mean, I don't teach hot yoga, so I don't know what the protocol is, but maybe you want to step outside for a moment. Maybe check with the studio owner. I don't know how many studio owners would be happy with that. Let's say, for example, you're teaching at the gym, you guys will have your own protocols, and someone passes out. what do we do? Like they faint. Not like unconscious, they just faint.
Tell everybody to go to Vipassana.
Yeah.
And then we're all the
But
same.
I don't mind
Don't do that.
if someone faints next to me, I don't want the teacher to go, okay, kindly, can the rest of you make your way into Shavasana? I'll be like, sorry guys, we got an emergency. Just sit down for a moment. I need to desperately attend to someone. I'm gonna call for help. Okay, cool. Maybe you got CPR and you know what to do. But if you don't, please don't do it. But that's what I'm saying. Know where you draw your boundary as a teacher. What role do I play? Where do I say, this is not for me, all right? I just want to end you guys with a story. And I went to go try and then we're gonna have a break. I went to a Virgin Active class and there was a new teacher who had just done her training who was taking the new slot. And guys, I know what it's like being a new teacher. Obviously, I was there. It's really nerve-wracking being in front of a class. Yes, 100%. And she went in front of the class and she said, are there any injuries today? And this girl walked in with a Transact down her neck. And then this teacher panicked. Like you could see it on her face. She's like, what's happening with your neck? And the girl said, I just slept a bit funny. It's a little bit sore, but I'm fine. I'm not worried. Guys, she came to yoga. She's fine. Like, I'm not going to come to yoga if I feel like I'm on my deathbed. Well, hopefully not. Maybe you will. But that's what I'm saying is she's come to yoga. She has decided she has okay to do yoga, right? And the teacher said, I don't know. I had a friend who had a slip disc up her neck and she came to a class at the gym and she injured herself. I got so anxious on the spot. I was like, oh my goodness, this poor girl is now thinking she's completely catastrophized the situation, which is like, it's a normal thing for us to be concerned for our students. But now planting that seed to go, oh, I know a friend that slipped her disc in her neck and you need to be careful. I don't want you to do this, do this, do this, do this. And this girl's like, I just slept a little bit funny. Like it's just a bit sore. We carried on with the class. We were probably about 10 minutes in and the teacher said, sorry, can everyone go into child's pose? Walked up to this girl and said, I don't feel comfortable having you in my class. I think you are really going to injure yourself and I think you need to leave. And I left, sorry. I don't like leaving classes, but I left because I left with that student because that student I spoke to outside and she said, I feel fine. I'm not at the gym. So this is a far end experience. I'm not saying, look, I don't know what was going on in that teacher's mind. I don't know what was going on in the student's mind. I'm telling this from my perspective of it, but I just want to show you that is how a role can play out. So we don't want to say to students, oh, don't go back and back bend because you might break your spine, or don't twist your neck because you might dislocate a shoulder, or whatever the case may be. That's diagnosing, that's not our territory. Okay, so empower your students. If you feel pain in your shoulder, this is a variation that you can do. Child's pose, arms back, maybe that helps. If it doesn't help, move into a position where you feel the best. Okay, move at your own pace, back off. If you don't know how to back off, first time in a yoga class, if you don't know how to back off, raise your hand, I can show you. All right, I'm not giving them a million different reasons. I'm saying try this. And I move on with the class. Okay, let's take a break. This has been fun and adventurous.